is Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode. Imagine you are riding along on a picturesque open road. Nothing ahead of you aside from patches of blue skies and stunning vistas. And then, bam, your steering goes a little shaky. You can't seem to get things going straight. Yeah, it's a flat tire. Sometimes that air slowly deflates and other times it immediately pops on its rim. It sucks. It absolutely sucks, especially when things are going well. Well, this is a perfect metaphor for the role of emotions in our lives because it happens. We're coasting along, feeling good, joyful space, and then wham, bam, sadness, fear, little dash anger. And all of a sudden we're just feeling flat. And sometimes you can't even begin to piece it together of how it happened. And other times you know exactly the nail you hit that did the damage. Well, that's what we're tackling on today's podcast, because as much as most of us would like to be perceived like we're always cruising along on this blissful ride, you and I both know that is just not simply reality. Thank God it's not, because we all, as we'll discuss today, what we think is our so-called negative emotions, well, they're just as important as our highest of highs. It's the peaks and valleys. So we're about to get real honest about those moments, the moments where we languish and we just do not feel like ourselves. And of course, we're going to provide you with your motivation maintenance at the end. A tool you can apply to your life today, and it'll take you along kind of like a patch kit when your tire goes flat. So let's get started. And this is your motivation.
I'm so happy we're tackling this topic today because I think it's particularly important, especially when we put ourselves out there as a motivational podcast. Because you nailed it in the intro there. The perception that we put out in our lives all the time, whether it be in our social media, even interactions with friends or families when they ask, hey, how are you doing? And you say, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. Even oftentimes when we are not. Why do we do this? I think a lot of that is intermingled with the fact that we identify emotions, these flat feelings of sadness or just all of a sudden feeling stuck, as something negative, as something that honestly can manifest into feeling ashamed for even feeling this way. And as a result, we don't allow them to flow through us. But it's so important to identify these emotions, be aware of these emotions, and to be quite honest, celebrate them in a way because they're this beautiful part of life. If every time in our lives, if you lived out all your years in a magnificent high, guess what? You would have no idea it was a magnificent high. It would be a realm of sameness. You would learn nothing. So I think that's why, Lori, it's so important today to be talking about the fact that sometimes things just suck. And sometimes you know why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. It could be a traumatic event. It could be something that's happening directly to you or someone you love that feels so out of control and it's going to bring up all these emotions to the surface that you don't even know how to process. Or something that I think we talk about even less is when we get stuck in a feeling and we can't identify the why behind that feeling. And that can be stressful in its own right. But the biggest thing is having these conversations because we live in a society where sometimes we get painted in this feeling that we always have to be, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. And there's a pressure in that. And I think it's time to open up the door with brutal honesty and say these raw emotions that maybe don't necessarily feel good are part of life. We all go through it and they are important.
When you say about there's that underlying shame, well, Brene Brown has created an entire career around it. And there's a reason for it because it was finally kind of spoken to. And she studies literally shame and vulnerability. And when you look at human behavior from such a young age, when a child has these really big emotions past infancy, it's called tantrums or it's called whining. And there's such a negative reaction by adults towards that, right? Make that go away, punishment, negativity, shame. So we're taught very, very young that this is an emotion big emotions or difficult emotions or something to that bring a negativity surrounding it. So we never really learn how to what's actually happening within us, but that it's something to hold space for. It's something to be present for. It's a natural thing that happens to everybody that breathes air on this planet. And so we do walk around with a level of shame if we haven't really understood what an emotion is. And every emotion, I know, we say positive or negative, but really we as human beings have attached negativity or positivity around of emotion. But emotion in itself doesn't have any attachment other than it's energy in motion. That is what's happening. It's just energy moving and circulating, and they circulate differently, whether you have I'm going to use it, the positive experience or the negative. But to get, not too deep into the science of it all and the kind of neural pathways of attachment to thought and emotion and all the above. But we say those things of how are you today? I'm good, I'm fine, when you've just been, say, crying in your car and you come out and I don't want to burden anybody with that. And the reason why a lot of times someone say, well, that's not a myth. One time I told that person exactly how I feel like crap. And they looked at me like deer in the headlights, because that person on the receiving end doesn't know what to say, because they're going, oh God, I don't know what to do with this heavy emotion or feeling that they're sharing with me. And then they panic because they're also like, I don't know what to say or do, which only then contributes to the awkwardness. Now, this is changing because there's so much being discussed around mental health, because it's become such a massive issue around anxiety and depression. And, and then in extreme cases, you've got things like bipolar and I don't say extreme cases again in a negative way, but in a way that it dominates a lot of their lives and they have to be so on top of it. And I'm somebody that's dealt with heavy, heavy bouts of depression at times in my life. And it's only just as of recently, over the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, but I'd say more 5, that I started to understand the level of shame that I have attached to when I have difficult feelings. I just want to get the fuck away from them. I just want to run. And I've only just started to understand that you can run, but you can't hide. And I think that's what we really want to talk about in this, is not only to release the shame around it and understand that that's a process, but more importantly, that this is something to experience, not to wish away, like the flat tire, right? Even that, when those things happen, what do they say? Oh God, it's just my luck, or I can't believe this happened, or you spend all this energy and now you're creating more of a disruption within yourself over the fact that it happened and all the reasons it might have happened and all the attachments, rather than the acceptance that I have a flat tire. You can have that emotion, a disappointment, but the acceptance, the sooner you get to acceptance that it's happened or it's happening, the sooner you can acknowledge it, move through it, and get on the other side of it.
I find it so fascinating you saying our attachments that we create with emotions, and especially when that starts through our childhood life. Before we started this podcast today, I actually went through that box of things, the box of things that we all, I'm sure, have from growing up, that has all the miscellaneous collection that perhaps your parents thought they might want to look at one day. And in mine, I have report cards from years past, starting at JK. And there's a common theme about really what I've come to realize in adulthood really is embedded into what my personality is. And quite honestly, what I'm starting to discover is perhaps my special feature. But I am an optimist through and through. The amount of times that came through in these report cards about that personality trait of mine, the sunny side being up, was tremendous. But there's an interesting pressure that started to create in my life as I got older. Anytime I was going through something that, again, I either could directly identify what the cause was for an extreme emotional experience that wasn't joy or happiness or feeling on top of the world, I would feel this pressure inside to still on the surface display the optimism. And that's not what an optimist really is. You cannot just always be preaching that life is magical and dandy and this incredible thing. And yes, life is, but in a different way than we define it to be. It needs to be all of the things and all of the experiences. And I denied myself that for years. Or as you say, that shame and that guilt. It got so bad that I'm not going to go deep into the story for this podcast, but in a very quick nutshell, early in my career, got laid off. I had made the mistake of attaching my identity to what I did versus me as who I am. And it took me right off the tracks. It was the instant all four tires went flat, and I had never experienced that in my life. I didn't even know how to process everything that I was feeling inside. But because on a surface level, I was trying to be so okay, that's how I suffered my very first panic attack in my life. Came in the middle of the night, thought I was having a heart attack. It was an extremely scary experience that I hope to not live out again, but I know that that can happen if you become a stuffer and just keep everything inside. And that's what happens when we don't allow these emotions to flow through. And I think, Lori, you and I can agree when we're saying this, it's not about flowing through and being angry and necessarily stomping and kicking your heels on the ground like when you're 3 years old, but it's knowing, okay, I'm in this place. This is how I'm feeling. I'm aware, and I'm going to give myself some space to feel this shit, because this is life and this is real. And it's either going to provide a lesson for me to learn from, or it's just something that I need to have move through my body, because it is that essence of energy that if I trap inside, it's going to cause some serious disruption. In this case of 2014, for me was that epic panic attack, which was not fun for me or my husband, who witnessed it as it clawed into him, convinced I was dying. It was crazy.
I haven't had I've had a slight panic attack, I should say. I got quite dizzy. I was crying. Yes. And it was, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But yes, when you speak to, I think what we don't realize is how much that we're emotion hoarders. And when I say emotion hoarders is we're taught at such a young age to put it away, stuff it away. So we stuff it under carpets and we put it in the closet, and the proverbial closet, and we put everything in these, we stuff it everywhere we can until something even small happens. And all of a sudden everything comes spilling out, and we look irrational, or we look like we're being crazy in it, or that's when things really get uncomfortable for everyone involved, because what has triggered it doesn't meet the level of disruption and energy that emotion has. And the reason is because almost think of it like a valve that you're letting, you're opening. Every time that emotion comes, you have to let the valve out to let that, or else it's going to combust. And when I've mentioned this before, I research human development for a living. And so when I started to understand more of the neuroscience and energy around things of us as human beings, it was just like these aha moments just kept clicking away and clicking away. And that's all well and fine if you understand it philosophically, but then putting it into practice. And it has just been a game changer. I used to be so afraid of constantly slipping into depression again. And what I understand now, for me personally, for my depression personally, I can only speak to that, is that it was me never releasing the valve, not really. And I would just constantly combust, and then I would hoard all these emotions again. And the combustion was essentially a deep level of depression. And I'd be sorting through everything that I avoided sorting through at a pace. And now when things happen or this disruption comes up, these feelings, which just happen as of lately, I was in a really great headspace. I do my daily work. I meditate, gratitude. I work out every day. I'm very diligent around self-care. I without apologies, kind of have this protective bubble around taking care of myself, because I know what the cost is if I don't. But here's the thing, life is still happening. And there is very, very heavy things that are happening in my personal life with people that I love with all my heart that are dealing with illness that I'm very involved with. And we just had a couple of really difficult weeks on top of some other areas of difficulties. Anyways, What's happened is, yes, the self-care is a beautiful thing. And this helps. This massively helps, because this also helps for me to recognize you need to release this valve. Like you are having some vibrations, you got some energy flowing, and you've got that it needs to release. So we went out to this cabin this past weekend, this incredible cabin in the woods on this little lake, picture perfect paradise. And I slipped into my old thinking of attaching my release around, when I have this, it will fix this, right? That if I just have this will feeling will go away, versus understanding that this experience will set up an environment that makes it more conducive. But I still have to do the work. You might have a tire pump and a patch, but you still have to fill that tire. It just doesn't magically happen. And so I got out there the first day, and I could just feel the energy just vibrating through every limb. And I could feel myself having more attachments to things that are kind of frustrating, but I could feel like they were pissing me off. And I understood, because of the work that I do on a daily basis, that okay, you're not that angry about that thing that someone said, or this thing that just went wrong, or the bench that I accidentally just kicked that now I want to demolish into 1,000 pieces. Like the valve needs to be released, and this is going to be environment. But then I almost got a little annoyed, because I got out to this cabin, and in the first 6 hours, I thought, why don't I feel better? And it recurred. And then it was that moment where I remembered, because you have to still feel the feeling. And that's the biggest component that we still don't understand as a collective and a society, the importance of, you cannot avoid feeling the feeling, the actual feeling. It doesn't mean attaching all these memories to the feeling. It doesn't mean, trying to feel it as quick as you can and then say, well, I felt it for 10 minutes. Why is it still there? But whatever needs to flow through. And it is so uncomfortable. It really is. Like, there's no way around it. It is not easy. It comes with such a discomfort. But once you feel it, actually, you can almost feel it leave you. And I think of how much extra suffering that I've put upon myself in life, because I didn't know better. So I wasn't able to do better. But you think of us as humans, of like, life is so difficult, but we are so scared to move through it. We're so scared to experience that feeling, because we attach so much else to it that it becomes heavier than it actually is. It's not like it's not easy, that it's easy once you do feel it and no attachments to it, and you're just feeling the raw emotion. It's still tricky. But we spend so much time just suffering to try and avoid the suffering.
It's so true, because I think we get so fixated on trying to fix ourselves, where these emotions are not something to be fixed. That's where the misconception lies, right? Yes. But we all of a sudden start to think, oh gosh, there's something wrong with me. And in a sense, you may feel off. You may feel that something is not right. And most of the time, if that feeling comes out of nowhere, a lot of times I realize it's because I'm out of alignment with something in my life. I'm not doing something or seeing something that's going to serve me. And that process is the most uncomfortable process to come to the conclusion. And I don't know, Lori, if you're like me, if you've ever been stuck where that feeling just hits you like a Mack truck. And all of a sudden I'm like, everything was fine yesterday. I don't feel right. And it sits in your gut. And sometimes that doesn't go away right away. I've had periods of my life that I've journaled through where I'm sitting in it for a month or more. But the big change started to happen for me again when I stopped putting this pressure on myself to just put it away, because I was a very guilty emotional stuffer. Anything that wasn't how the world perceived me, and how every teacher that wrote it in that report card growing up, if I didn't show up in that way, I was like, I'm not doing something right. I need to just keep putting this on and putting it on. And then eventually it's just going to disappear. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And I mean, obviously my heart has been so with you, because I know that life brings these journeys that end up unbearable to walk through. And life, when we compare it to the popping of the tire, instead of a slow deflation, it's something that rams you right in the side and knocks your car right on the ground. And all of a sudden you're stuck and you literally have nowhere to go except feel it. And it is heart-wrenching to go through any ordeal that causes trauma to people that we love. Or obviously, if you're dealing a journey with yourself, I mean, hopefully you're very in love with yourself and you're seeing yourself go through this uphill battle. But those experiences are part of our journey on this earth. And they're so terrible in the moment, but there's so much meaning that comes from them in their lives. Like, I think of you seeing two people that you love so dearly go through something so heartbreaking with illness. How incredibly powerful is it to love other human beings so deeply, to be able to feel those emotions that are hurting you so greatly? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an amazing beauty to love another soul so compassionately and so deeply and so thoroughly. And again, that is why these emotions are so important. You need to have that flow through you, because that's a lot to take on anyone's shoulders. And you can't just deny that level of love. I think that a lot of those things that we identify as negativity, whether it's anger over something that's really horrible that's happening in your life, or sadness that you're dealing with, there's so much love attached to those emotions as well. I mean, really, we know that's the basis of so much. That's what a lot of the energy that flows through us is.
You tap into a new level of connection. You tap into a new level of empathy. You tap into a new level of resiliency. You tap into a new level of appreciation and gratitude. I have learned and expanded as a person more from the most difficult times in my life than any of the blessings have ever offered me. Those are all wonderful memories, but they don't encourage me to stretch myself. They haven't encouraged me to expand myself. It has been the times that I've come out of depression with these aha moments that have changed my life. Unfortunately, I waited till I had to go and have it in this condensed version of it. And now every time I, let the valve go, I have a mini like aha moment. And it really is that, where you said it's that redirection, or it's that life tapping you on the shoulder, because also every emotion is coming along to whisper something in you. You can ignore it and it'll start speaking louder, and you can ignore it, it'll shout in your ear. It might scream at you, which I feel is my version of depression, of like, stop everything. And, and I just go numb to it all until I can, my soul can be heard again, in other words, for me personally. But going through these experiences of where you realize the fragility of life, and that's what has my experience of illness has I don't want to say offered me, because it's not like it's a gift, but in its own way, I guess it is, only in regard to it just changed everything. And it's also pushed me to look at where I show up in fear and how I harden myself in fear when moments of fear. And you don't have time to harden, because when and if, that time is short that I have with those people that I love that are ill, then there is a window of time in which I get to be vulnerable and I get to love unconditionally. And so it really pulls you to rise to an occasion. And it's not easy. It is not pretty. It is not, it is ebbs and flows. Good Lord, it's the highest of peaks and the lowest of valleys that I've ever experienced in my life. But because of it, I have adopted, without a doubt, the difference of looking at life, that it is not happening to us, but it is happening for us in every capacity, the highest of peaks in the lowest of valleys. Like where I have been crying in my motorcycle helmet with pure joy and anguish at the exact same moment, with just pure sadness and fear slash appreciation. And my God, like, that's why we say, how can that possibly be negative and positive then? That's just an experience, and that's just the flow of energy. And it just so happens that they all happen one and the same. And so which one should I have kept and which one would I have discarded? Well, I couldn't have had the one if I didn't have the other. How would I have had such a deep appreciation? How could I have such a deep gratitude that I write to this? I never would have appreciated a fucking leaf like I do now if I wouldn't have known the fragility of life that I've experienced over, losing people I love dearly. And so when we speak to, it's all part of it. It's all part of the incredible beauty, but we have to be willing to have a bit more grace with ourselves and others. And we have to be willing to not be so afraid of becoming comfortable with it all. And also, if someone shares with you their suffering or desperation or their that feeling that tells you to turn away or change the subject or just awkwardly look at them, which I've had, so many times in my experiences. And it used to
people are like, you were supposed to say you were fine.
Oh yeah. Like,
shit. She didn't say she's fine.
Yeah.
Not prepared for the follow-up question.
Oh, you see their face of like, oh God, wait, whoa, you're off script. Whoa, I didn't know we were going off script.
Put it back.
And I have honestly, just as of lately, especially shared that when people are saying, how are you today? I'm quite honest with it. And I don't look at it as like I'm dumping it on their lap. Obviously, too, you don't want to be, I think Brene Brown calls it smash and grab, where you just like dump your story on someone and expect them to like, and they're just like, what just happened? Where am I? But you can be honest in saying, there's some heavy things rocking in life right now, but I'm glad I'm here or whatever, or just, hey, it's a heavy day for me. But, I'm really focusing on being present. I had to say that at work yesterday when we did our check-in for our team meeting. And I was really quite honest. A lot of heavy things going on. And I just came from it just this second before coming into work. And so I'm just switching right now to being present in this moment. And they were like, okay, thanks for being honest. Rather than like, I'm good. I wasn't good. I wasn't horrible, but I wasn't good.
Yeah. And I think that it's so important to have that level of honesty. And as well as humans showing up for others in a different way as well, because it's so often just using the, hey, how are you in the hallway thing. I've really tried to start practicing when someone like yourself either has that response, or what I've noticed a lot lately is people saying, I'm okay. Because we know languishing is the new term. That's what a lot of people have been doing through this collective world experience we've been going through. And I will stop when I ask someone how they are doing now. Used to just do it in the hallway because it's a nicety. I will physically stop. If I get a mediocre response, that's actually what I've said. I'm like, well, that sounds a little blasé. Like, what's going on? Just a follow up. And if it has made space for conversations that I wouldn't have normally had. And as you say, Lori, it's not like all of a sudden I'm a recipient of a mass emotional dump. But at the end of the day, it's an olive branch, because we are always navigating peaks and valleys in lives, no matter what front you bring into your daily life. So if you're in a person that is maybe in an elevated state of energy, that's vibing in a more joyful space, then you can make space for others to help lift them up when they need it a little bit. I think that's why it's so important to have the conversations. You and I, Lori, when we were podcast planning just the other week, every second month, there is an evil that rises up inside of me as a woman. I'm coming out this evil. But it is not the optimistic child my teachers wrote about growing up, let me tell you. And I can feel it start to bubble. It's like this pot that's put onto the gas stove, and all of a sudden it starts to rage and it is ready. And I just said to you, yeah, I'm not really my best self today. Everything's making me angry. And I know that it is, but just communicating that to you. And you're like, okay, like, sorry that you're feeling that today. And we had a really nice conversation out of it. But even something as simple as that, it's not like I was going through a magnificent life event that was causing me to feel that way. I just was not feeling myself. And instead of having to pretend and show up in this facade, I was like, let's start peeling back the layers, because I don't think we're doing ourselves any good service in pretending as a society that we have to be the beautiful aesthetic of an Instagram feed. Yes, we share a lot of motivational quotes on our page, but not every day you're feeling fueled like that. And that's why we need to converse, because I don't think it's great that I spent so many years of my life feeling like something was wrong with me if I wasn't super happy that day. It's wild to think how much pressure and shame a human can feel if they aren't showing up with a plastered on smile on their face. That's ridiculous. And I do really love that these mental health conversations are happening. I think we still have tremendous strides to go. Tremendous strides to go.
And to keep it simple, so much of what all of us want is just to be seen and heard in where we're at in that moment. In that, the holding space is a big phrase that's used often now. I use it often. But when we say holding space, what I understand it to mean, and what I understand it to be, is just showing up and being fully present. You don't necessarily have to say the right thing. Sometimes just acknowledging that you're there and you hear them, like quite literally saying, I hear you, or that sounds difficult, is enough for that person to just immediately just feel a release in that moment, because another human being sees them and hears them. With early childhood and working with parents and other educators, the big thing is understanding that behind every behavior and every emotion of a child, and this is just a human being thing, there is a need. And so if we can allow the feeling, the emotion to move through without labeling it, attaching it, trying to control it away and wish it away, but just kind of have a pause button, let that move through. And then on the other side of it, say, how can I help you? What do you need? Because then we're really looking at the human behind the energy, and we're separating them, because so often we have it this kind of one in the same, you are your behavior, or you are that emotion, where it's like, this is just something moving through you. But the need on the other side is, I'm not feeling seen. I'm not feeling heard. I feel overwhelmed. I feel at a loss. I feel discouraged. I feel there's something behind it. And so sometimes just someone saying, I hear you and I see you, is enough for that person to just go, I don't feel alone in this. And in a world that's moving at the pace that it's moving at, and with the rate at which information is that we're taking in, our brains aren't being able to process along at the speed our emotions are. Thus why anxiety and depression is at such a high volume across the world, is we aren't able to keep up with it all. And sometimes someone just saying, I get it, is enough for everything to like woof, 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 slow down. And then, okay, I'm not okay. And so with that kind of where we're always like, well, what do I say to this? And we make it more complicated than it has to actually be. So you don't have to say anything, but you also don't have to be scared looking like a deer in headlights when someone tells you it. You can just kind of in that moment have compassion for that person. And if you've ever had someone hold enough space to hold compassion for you, you feel it. You see it in their eyes, you see it in their body, and everything it feels like a warm hug. It feels like being a kid again, and an adult just wrapping their arms around you and being like, you know what? It's going to be okay. And you're like, okay. Yeah, okay.
It so reminds me when I worked on cruise ships a decade ago, there was this little Irish woman named Siobhan, and she used to come up to you and be like, everything's going to be all right, chicken, and pinch your cheek. And I still think of that if I'm having a bad day, or if I see someone else, I just want to come up. I can never do it in her wonderful, beautiful Irish way. But I was like, yes, everything is going to be all right, chicken. It's so simple.
We need her to do a voiceover and that be the end of every podcast.
You would love it. And I need to find, I don't know where. She is such an intrepid world traveler, but now I shall make it my mission to track her because the internet is creepy and I can get creepy on the internet and find anybody. But ultimately, I think in this discussion, it's just so important to honor your feelings, know that there is no shame or guilt or anything else that should be associated with what you perceive as a negative emotion. All of our emotions are valid. All of our emotions are part of the human experience. And I think, Lori, that could potentially lead us to motivation. So close on the harmony. Maintenance.
Prettier every time. I swear to God.
Really,
yours. What is yours, Christy? Yeah.
Just a remix. Actually, if somebody is really good in auto-tune, I would really love one of those mashups. So that is a special request. But mine really goes to something that I practiced. God, I honestly remember even being a teenager in my bedroom doing this, and I didn't learn it from myself. It was actually my dad used to, back in the day with disc changers, put in a CD that matched the feelings. I remember seeing my dad sit on the couch, pop in some very intense opera or a very intense Led Zeppelin track, whatever the emotion was, and blare it and feel the feels. I saw my dad sit on the couch and bawl his eyes out to music. And there's a reason why music therapy exists. So for me personally, if I'm having an emotion that I find difficult to deal with, whether I'm pissed off as I was in the bubbling pot of water or feeling like a ball of sadness crouched next to my laundry basket with heaving sobs, because yes, that happened. It was February 2020. I took a video. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you.
We'll post it.
I should honestly, because those ugly moments definitely happen. And again, down the line, they're beautiful. But I will find a soundtrack that really connects with that emotion that I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling sad, no, I'm not going to seek out a happy track. I find something that resonates that I know is going to have me feel that emotion. And I put my headphones in, and I kid you not, Lori, I've literally lied in my bed before I go to sleep and just cried my eyes out listening to the sound. And I can't tell you the feeling that you get connecting to music. It is a universal language for a reason. It's incredible that it can invoke something in us so differently. And I don't think there's anything wrong with stirring yourself up with that to help process that energy. It is such an effective tool for me. So this really goes back to what, Lori, you were saying in the beginning. It's not about hiding from it. It's not about stuffing everything in the closet and trying to desperately shut the door. For me, and my recommendation for you, if you're having a difficult time, pop the headphones in, put it on blast, connect with an emotive song that really represents how you're feeling, and let it just flow through you. It's an incredible tool. God, we're so lucky to have the gift of music.
I double down on that 100%. I even have playlists that are actually labeled. Like one of them is called Release, and it's for specifically all songs that just cut me to the core of my emotions. And it's for exactly that. When I feel the buildup, and it's almost like a manual release. Double down on that. Same thing. I'll like light a candle and like put the lights out just to have the right environment where I can just unleash. Gone to the forest and scream cried while listening to these playlists. Like
amazing.
Yes. Everything Chrissy just said, I couldn't agree with it more. It's been one of the biggest tools that I've used as well in my life. And since a young person, and I couldn't imagine not having it, to be honest. All right. My tool is one that I learned from the book Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Incredible book, incredible book. If you ever are interested, grab it. So essentially it's this understanding of staying seated and creating this little bit of space between your thoughts and kind of ego and who you are as a person. And then you're essentially your soul and your spirit, and enough of this that you can kind of watch the emotion. You can create just enough space to actually sit behind the emotion and witness it. And so in the way, I haven't read this, I've just been practicing this for a long time. So if I screw this up at all, this is what I do and it works well. So I lay and I close my eyes and I kind of take enough deep breaths. It's to an extent like a meditation, if you will, but I focus on my body and where that emotion is. Is it in my chest? Is it in my throat? Is it all over? Where is it? And I kind of feel it. And then as I kind of focus on that feeling, I take my consciousness and kind of pull it back so that I'm almost like watching the emotion as like an entity. And I just kind of feel the energy of it and breathe it in and breathe it out when I find myself attaching a thought to that energy, so say it's a heavy energy and I think, yeah, but so-and-so said this and that, or I just wish this, I pull back again, that little space that you can create. And I pull back to watching the emotion as like an entity. And it's incredible how well it works. It takes a little bit of practice, but how much quicker I'm able to release that energy. Now you still feel the energy. It still feels heavy, but you just stay with the feeling. Sometimes it makes me sweat. Sometimes it makes me even like want to vomit. I just stay with the sensation of wanting to vomit. You just stay with it because it's moving through you. It's an energy. So again, Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's like my Bible. But that is mine, is close your eyes, breathe it in and out, feel the feeling, create a little separation and just ride it and just see where it goes. And don't avoid it, just stay with it. I promise you, when you're on the other side of it, you feel and you know you're on the other side of it.
That's fantastic, Lori. I think one of the things that you point out that we didn't address too much, but that illustrates so well, is the fact how all these emotions moving through us are always temporary. Just as you talked about going through the peaks and valleys, humanity is amazing. We're always moving forward. And before you know it, even in those most impossible moments where you think, how the hell am I going to get to the other side of this? Even if you're using your rearview mirror and you're seeing it so momentous and it almost deeming it an impossibility, we do. And it's incredible to think that we have the ability to move through. And I do want to mention as well, if you're really struggling, therapy, please seek the help, reach out to your friends and your circles. But if that's not enough, like, please never hesitate. There is zero weakness in that. Finally, that message is emulating through the high heavens of the world, but it took long enough.
God, yeah. I couldn't preach more about going and actually getting professional help. Whenever it's gotten too heavy for me in my lifetime, I always go. And it is the thing that pushes it over the edge to me being able to get to my clarity sooner. So hell to the yeah. You got a quote, Chrissy, today?
I sure do. And I know you're going to be shocked. I even have who wrote it. Because
I don't.
I'm bad about that.
No, I don't have one for mine.
Shame. You should sit in a ball of shame. No. Sit in that tonight. No. So this one comes from Evie Regina. Emotions are meant to flow through us. They exist so they can be felt, not changed, altered, ignored. Allow yourself to feel everything for exactly what it is: the painful, the beautiful, the overwhelming intensity of being human.
Oh my gosh, how do you follow that?
It is a good one, isn't it?
How does one follow that? All right. Maybe when I edit this, I'll swap them. So yours will be the same. That's what I'll do. All right. This is by Hilaha. Because I don't know.
I love their work.
Their work. Gorgeous name, exotic. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not think, not wonder, not imagine, not obsess. Just breathe and have faith that everything will work out for the best.
Oh, see, you were worried about following it, and then you did it.
And you go on and you done it.
You done did it.
You
And
done
that,
did
my
good.
friends,
Oh, yeah.
is your motivation.
You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.